Sometimes we have conversations.
So I told him I was ready. I don't know if we're going to get a light flash or he's ready. Just go?
Good to go.
Okay, all right. So, good evening. I will call to order Wilsonville City Council meeting for whatever we are, September 5, 2019 already, end of summer. Roll call if we could, please.
Councillor West.
Here.
Council President Ackerval. Here. Councillor Lehan.
Here.
Mayor Knapp.
Here. I would invite the audience to rise and please join us in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Open to a motion on order of agenda.
Your Honor, I move we approve the order of agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second, we approve order of agenda as previously published. There are copies on the counter at the side of the room. Should any of the audience like to see one? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, passes 4-0. Under communications this evening, we have the pleasure of being visited by Dr. Kathy Ludwig, the superintendent of West Linn Wilsonville Schools, who is here to communicate about what is going on in the schools area. Please come talk with us. And your associate, who I didn't get his name down here from.
Communications Director, Andrew Kilstrom.
Very good, thank you.
Do you want me to cue this up here?
Ah, there we go.
I didn't know if it just started automatically or. Well, thank you so much for having us. I don't know, I think we have about 10, 15 minutes to share. Is that about right? Or less than that?
If you need that much, yes.
Oh, okay. We'll try and shave it down from there then. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here and to share with you information that we have from our school district and our school board regarding a upcoming capital bond and local option levy that have been placed on the November election ballot. Most of you have been a part of some or most of the processes in the last year and a half that have led us to this place. Just very briefly, this is our mission question that guides our work and always asks us to think about creating those learning communities for our students, for our children, as they go out into the world as greatest thinkers and thoughtful people for the world. And when you think about how does a capital bond or local option levy connect to that, where you're thinking about the spaces for that thinking, and you're considering the instructors that are in front of those students, helping to shape and prepare them for the future. Last year, our board created a goal to really think about long-term financing as well as sustainability for the district, and also to respond to the growth that's happening in both communities of Wilsonville and West Linn, and created a charge for themselves to really take a look at what they could do as a board to think about long-term sustainability and projects. Out of that came a series of actions and events, and a number of you were a part of those. It first started with a charge to the district staff and the Long Range Planning Committee to develop a plan. Part of that plan was to do a 10-year enrollment growth projection analysis, and the firm Flow Analytics was hired to do that work. They work in Washington as well as Oregon with a number of school districts, municipalities, any organization that might be looking at growth in their area. Additionally, a building capacity update was done of all of our schools, how many students can be accommodated at each school given the types of programs that are being run today. The board also put together safety advisory committees composed of parents, teachers, students, district staff to take a look at what the community felt were good measures in place already in our schools regarding safety and security and where we could make improvements. Information from the enrollment growth, the building capacity, those safety committees, and then also information from a year-long superintendent high school study, which we did in 17-18, and some high school forums also came forward to the board around how do we think about our high schools today and the programs that lead them to the future. Preemptively, we also did a Title IX review. There was no complaint or legal action that caused this. We did this really out of a measure of due diligence to think about if we were looking at our facilities, how did we really understand how they met in terms of gender equity in Title IX? So a consultant was hired to do that review with a very favorable result in terms of how both communities have invested across the two communities in regard to the facilities, sports facilities for our male and female athletes. Some of the recommendations that came out of that were ones that we were already considering, that the board already knew about. Community surveys were conducted last year as well as focus groups, and almost all of you, I think, participated at the Bond Summit in February, where we had at least 200 patrons come and give feedback on the proposed bond projects at the time. We had presented 7 to the community with the understanding that we did have the capacity, the bond capacity to fulfill all 7, but we wondered if the community felt all 7 were needed. And if you remember that sticker dot activity at the end, it was really clear from the analysis of that the community felt strongly, both communities felt strongly about all 7 projects and saw the understanding behind them. So in August, our board made a decision to go ahead, given all of the information then from those actions last year and those events, to place on the November 5th ballot, the special election that's coming up, a capital bond and a local option levy renewal. Both of our communities, Westland and Wilsonville, have a long history of passing bonds all the way back from 1970, when the community has been approached to help with facilities and capital construction. One of the commitments that's been made to the community is that the capital projects would stay under the $3 per thousand assessed value. And as bonds retire or get paid off, that it creates a gap in there, and that the district would pay attention to that gap and only issue a new bond if we could stay below the $3 per thousand assessed value. And that has been achieved with each of the bonds. With the one that's being proposed, it would also stay with below the $3 per thousand assessed value. There are 7 bond projects on the ballot. Some of this is review for you, so I'll go through it quickly. First, safe and welcoming schools. From those board safety advisory committees and feedback we've been hearing from the community the last few years, safety is very important for our families. The biggest project in this topic is around ensuring secure school entries, so that when students enter a building, staff are aware who has come into a building, parents, visitors, and that they must go through a secure entry. We have that at a few of our schools. We don't have it at all of them. So this would ensure that all 16 schools have secure school entrances, classroom lockdown hardware, intrusion limiting glass. All of these ideas did come from our community through those board safety advisory committees. So these were parents, students, teachers, and staff who brought forward many of these items that we have on the list. But also include replacing fire alarm systems, those kinds of mechanical, electrical systems that contribute to safety and security. Increasing access to the arts. This one is probably more near and dear to your hearts. There's been a number of times that we've been hoping to get this new theater on a bond. We weren't able to on the last one, but we did put it back on the bond for consideration this time, and this is to increase and to create a larger performing arts center that has increased space at Wilsonville High School. The current arts theater holds about 200 students, and this would increase, the new Performing Arts Center would hold about 600 students. So we're bringing it up to the capacity of now the size of the school, and even as it gets larger, and more comparable to what West Linn has for its larger high school size. The current theater space would then be turned into additional classroom space and maker space for CTE classes, which is also needed at the school as it continues to grow. There would also be some site improvements because of that and additional parking that would be created. Of course, we know that growth is happening across the district and especially at our two high schools. So this project called Enrollment Growth at Secondary Level addresses that need. We are looking at expanding Arts and Technology High School, growing it a little larger and relocating it to where the current Athey Creek Middle School sits, right on Stafford Road there by 205, and then moving Athey Creek Middle School and building a new middle school on district-owned property in West Linn, so it can become a walkable middle school. Right now, where it sits, it's not, but we can move it closer into town, which is where the district property is, it becomes a walkable middle school. When we were considering future high school scenarios through the superintendent study and those forums, and I know a few of you were able to attend those, we did put in front of the community some options for what we could do with high school, and this was one of the more popular options that did come back to us. When we asked, should we build, lease, or relocate and use district property, that latter idea was the more favorable that we heard from the community, to not keep leasing space for arts and technology, but give it a more permanent home, and to use a facility that we already had and property that we already had. So that was the option that we landed on. West Linn High School continues to grow. It actually has a smaller stadium seating capacity than Wilsonville High School, and that creates, if you've ever been to a West Linn football game, it's very different than the Wilsonville ones. The spectators actually spread all the way around the field and sit up on the grass and the dirt. There's just isn't the space for those kinds of events, including the parking. But not just at those events, it is our only space where we can have all of our students seated for either a whole school assembly, or if there was a safety event and we needed to take them out onto the field. It is our only space to contain all the students, and just not having as much seating for them to keep them safe has become an issue as we think about safety plans and evacuation plans. So expanding the stadium would allow for more seating. It would also allow us to present a proposal to the city for additional parking, which is also needed at the high school. Back to growth here in Wilsonville. We all know the Frog Pond area is developing and that a new primary school will be needed very soon. This summer, we did place portable classrooms at Beckman Creek Primary. And we've moved the third grade classes out there because we don't have enough space in the school building. They're beautiful classrooms. They look more like a modular office building, the way they're constructing them today, and they're really well designed and great instruction is happening there already. But they're temporary, and it's our way of providing some space and time as we consider a new school then in the Frog Pond area. That would be at the, where the Crest Farm is the property right there by the Street of Dreams, where the location would be for the new school. Of course, we can't do this work anymore or do real rigorous learning without technology that's updated. It's not just devices that we need to keep putting in front of students that have the kind of capacity for high levels of learning, but it's also about keeping up with rewiring of systems and infrastructure, Wi-Fi, and all sorts of systems that you're aware of with, to keep an organization going. With 10,000 students and 1,000 faculty and staff, it takes a lot to keep all of the technology updated and continuing to stay in line with what's happening in terms of internet capacity. So this is not just about, oops. Just go there. No? Now that I've hit that, I have to use that button probably. There we go. And then lastly, district-wide improvements. The list is longer than what's on here, but these are just highlights. We're going to do some additional classroom and learning spaces at Crest, wet lab there. We have a very robust ecology and environmental sciences program, K-12, when we think about the gardens in our classrooms, and then how do those evolve and become more sophisticated learning spaces. We'd like to install greenhouses then at the middle schools, which then transfers to then work with agriculture and farms at the high schools through our CTE courses, so having this real aligned trajectory with that. There's projects like replacing track surfaces or any kind of interior improvements to schools, aging roofs, infrastructure, walls, paint, wear and tear. When you have 500-600 students in a school building all day long, all year, there's wear and tear, and having district-wide improvements as an area on the capital bond will help us to keep up with the investment in the infrastructure of our schools. This is the total then from the estimates of those projects. And all of these can also be accessed and seen on our website under a tab that says 2019 bond. So anyone who's watching this evening and would like to learn more, you can access the school district website. We did receive a matching grant from the state because of the quality of our long-range plan and getting that application in time in July. We qualified for a grant. I wish matching was dollar for dollar. That would be really sweet. But it actually, that we received the maximum that was allowable to us, and it was about 7.2 million. You can see the figure there. That only comes to us if the bond measure is approved. And then with that, it actually gets added on top of what the bond would be. And so with that additional 7.1, we have earmarked it for more projects than at the new Arts and Technology High School that we could do around makerspace and CTE, and also more infrastructure and remodeling at Wood Middle School, which has now become our oldest middle school. And what's in the district-wide improvements are some basic finishes for the school, but we could do even more if we had 7.1 million. It's a lot of money, but when you're talking about construction and remodel, as you know, it goes very fast. And so it's about enough to cover those two projects, but it would be a great addition. Our two communities also have a long history of passing local option levies. These are different than capital construction bonds. Local option levies for us are just about hiring teachers. We began putting these levy in front of the community in 2000, and since 2000, every 5 years it has been approved. And then that amount allows us to hire and supplement with more teachers than what we can fund through the state fund, which in turn then creates smaller class sizes, which we know is very important in both of our communities. Whenever we poll our communities and say, what's most important to you, parents will say class size. And so since 2000, the supplemental funding source has allowed us to reduce class size as well as offer more programs in all of our schools. It's set to expire at the end of this school year, and currently it funds about 80 teachers. So you can see how deep that supplemental fund is. If the measure is not approved, in short, we would need to reduce 80 teachers, which is about $11 million the following year, because we wouldn't have that funding source. Like the capital bond, this is a renewal that we're asking for, meaning that we won't increase the rate of the current local option, which is right now at $1.50 per thousand, and this would just be a renewal of that $1.50 per thousand. So just to conclude, the ballot titles are filed, and you can see those numbers below. And our role now as a district is to make sure the community knows the information about the ballot, the bond, and the local option. We're here to present that information to the city. We will be going out to, we were at Westland City Council the other night. We'll be going out to various community groups, school PTAs, getting mailers out to families. Our role is to make sure the community knows everything about these two items on the ballot. So we'll end there. I hope I stayed as close to what you were hoping. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
That's great. Council, any questions for Dr. Ludwig? Councilor Ackervall.
I wonder, I know as you just reviewed, one of that kind of topics is the technology improvements. And will, I guess, training and increased support also be included in the budget for those items as staff and teachers are learning to adapt and use that new technology in the classrooms?
We always include training. It doesn't come from the capital bond, since that's always capital expenses, but we do factor that in for our professional development out of our general fund.
Great. Yeah. Thank
Great
you.
question.
Councilor West.
One thing that I know that a lot of us are proud of is the success of our robotics club. And I hear technology in that school, and I know that that constituency is just really needing a better space for themselves. And our robotics club, I don't know if everybody knows this, they have won international competitions, am I right? They have the notoriety and the success from these young people is quite the achievement, and they're brilliant young minds. And I'm hoping, and I don't know if this is even appropriate, but is some of that resources going to be able to help support the robotics club so they can have a space, or, and I know that that would be something that, I don't know. So that's my question.
Yeah, well, I would echo your observations. The Wilsonville robotics team has been a great inspiration throughout our district. West Linn now has a team greatly inspired by Wilsonville's team. In fact, some high school students from West Linn used to be on the Wilsonville team and may continue because there's great friendships there. It's also inspired us to move that program into our middle schools. So now we are growing our robotics programs at every middle school. And then we also are looking at how do we begin that at the primary level. With the new science standards, with an engineering folded into the new science standards, we had targeted second grade as a place to begin Lego robotics across all of our second grades in primary schools, so students would begin to have an understanding around how to begin some coding, as well as getting their minds ready and their curiosity, which then feeds into middle and high school. All that to say we need maker spaces for that. So how do we create those at our primary level? Often our libraries are used, but we know that parents will often be generous and use their garages and those kinds of things. In middle school, there is, when Meridian Creek was built, if you remember, there is that maker space there for robotics and other kinds of engineering projects. And then when the Wilsonville new Performance Arts Center is built, that theater will have places for makerspace, CTE, that could be multi-usable. So not just robotics, but just large open spaces for whether it's large art projects or robotics would be perfect for that.
Fantastic, thank you.
And additionally, with the Arts and Technology School then moving to Athey Creek, we can create those large maker spaces there as well for CTE and robotics.
Great, fantastic.
Councilor Lehan.
Yes, I just wanted to mention the issue that has come before us most recently. It has to do with parking in the neighborhoods around Wilsonville High School. And we were encouraging the community members who've approached us about it to talk with the school board, but also with perhaps meet with the student council to try to come up with solutions jointly with the people who are directly involved in the issue. And I didn't know if you had been involved in that much, but I was hoping that the answer isn't always we need to build more parking spaces. Are there ways that we can work together to incentivize carpooling and incentivize using the school buses or SMART or those kinds of things to keep from just perpetually adding more and more parking?
Well, I certainly hear you, and this is also the hot topic in West Linn.
And I'm very aware of it in West Linn. I have
what you have,
relatives.
what you have to the advantage here in Wilsonville is is also a topography that it encourages more biking and walking. It's flatter, and so we do hear from students that when they're carrying large backpacks and they're trying to maneuver on a bike in high school, and often they might be going from school to a job or carrying equipment for a sports or a club, any way that they can kind of do that safely always helps. So your SMART system is the envy of West Linn community. They're looking at if they could replicate something like that. So you already have that kind of that free public transportation. We have bus service for our high school students.
Right.
If they choose to use it. And many of them tell us that because they have increasingly flexible schedules with jobs and other commitments, they just need a more convenient way to navigate that. So they might ride the bus once a week or twice a week, and then access other means on those days when they have other commitments as they get older. We don't see ourselves taking a position on carpooling. We leave that up to parents. There are laws about drivers and who can be in the car, and parents' level of comfortability about whether their children should drive other people's children. And so we have just found that we best leave that message to parents and it not come from an expectation from the school district that our young people should drive other young people. So
do you see a role, though, for the students themselves to be involved in the dialogue?
We haven't been as involved in Wilsonville. Maybe it's a little earlier of a conversation, but in West Linn we have been quite a bit in conversation with students, encouraging them to think about alternative transportation, to think about bus riding, to also think about where they park and how to be good neighbors to their community, how to park safely, how to talk about that with their parents. We send messages in our listserv. We have conversations with students in assemblies. So we're doing the best we can, and we also are encouraging our parents to engage with their students about their driving and parking preferences and habits.
Okay. I was trying to get at it not being entirely your responsibility or our responsibility. I was of a way to engage the students themselves, whether it's your student government or student committees, or who might suggest ways, not just be told, here's what you should do or be doing, but to engage them in finding solutions that would work for the neighbors or for the neighborhood, or to be a part of that process rather than waiting for either the city council or the school board or someone else to come up with a solution. I was, anyway, hopeful that might happen.
They're involved. They're actively in this conversation. Parking has been, a challenge in West Linn High School for years. Before Wilsonville High School was built, West Linn High School was also close to 1,900, 2,000 students, and parking was a concern, back then as well, and being safe in the community. And so it's something that we're constantly in conversation around when you're in a dense, right in the middle of a city. As Wilsonville High School is growing and Wilsonville is growing, it's becoming now a conversation here. Our students have a forum in which they have these conversations. They did a survey of students asking each other why do you ride a car? How could you reduce the option of taking a car? What they hear from each other is, we know there's a school bus, we know that we could walk, but the activities and events in our life and being able to take a car to accommodate those is what prompts us to take a car to school. And those include sports activities, having a job. Sometimes they're tutoring and then they come back. They might leave for second period, come back for fourth period.
Yeah. No, I understand all the reason. Never mind. That's okay. No, I understand. I would I'm glad to hear that they're engaged in the discussion because as drivers, they're very close to being adults, and so they have impacts in the community
Correct,
as responsible drivers, and we want to include them in it, not just be telling them what they should do or that sort of
And including their parents in the conversations, who are providing the vehicles and coaching them along how to make these choices and when they get access to a car and maybe when they don't, and how to do it safely and responsibly.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
For sure.
Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come and inform us and our public here about the plans for the district, and looking forward to that kind of proactive sort of approach to understanding where the student populations are headed for our joint district. I've been engaged with Mayor Axelrod of West Linn in preparing a statement of support for both the levy proposal and the bond measure, and certainly we are both in a position of wanting to encourage our communities to continue the support that has long held for our schools, our joint school district. One of the strongest links, I think, between our two communities that are adjacent but not right next door to each other. And so we wish you all luck. I know that you're in a position of being a fact channel and not able to advocate, but many of the rest of us are in a position to advocate where we think it's appropriate, and hopefully you'll have a strong turnout that way.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thanks very much. That then is the last formal communication planned on the agenda, but we have a citizen input and community announcements section, which is an opportunity for visitors to address council on things that are not on the agenda. Also can be used for things that are on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during this period or during this time, either before the meeting ends or as soon as we can thereafter. We do ask you to hold your comments to 3 minutes. I have several cards from people that would like to speak. If there's anyone else that would like to speak, please do complete a speaker card and pass it forward to the city recorder, and join us when I call your name. I'll start out with Ms. Arbonne tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Arbin. My family's been Wilsonville residents for 25 years. I kindly ask that you allow me to leave my cap on due to the fact that we're being filmed and I have hair loss due to chemotherapy. I am a cancer patient. I beat breast cancer this year. I've been coming to the Wilsonville City Council meeting since I was in active treatment going through chemotherapy, begging my city council to review your current ordinance number 800 and the legality of it, and the fact that our city has chosen to put a ban on cannabis. This ban happened several years ago. A lot has happened since then, including over 100,000 jobs in our country, over 30,000 in Wilsonville alone. I'm currently the director of operations for a cannabis company. I'm really proud of what I do, and I'm really proud of the lives that I've helped saved. I don't know if you guys know this, but behind me, my neighbors, both husband and wife, have cancer. Across the street from them, my neighbor has passed away from cancer. My father, in my home, died in 1998 of lung cancer. My neighbor, directly across the street from me, died of melanoma of cancer in 2015. Our community is so good at being on the right side of history when it comes to technology, schools, greenhouses in our schools. I love that Dr. Ludwig in her second slide tonight had a slide that said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." I'm here at as many council meetings as I can be, trying to be that change. I have gone to school and I have learned that cannabis helps save lives. It's actually good for the human body and a superfood. And I'm trying to get my council to recognize that this is a legitimate industry, a legitimate business, and tax money can really benefit our entire city. I'd also like to just take my last minute to read to you a comment in my breast cancer survivor group on Facebook from Shelby in Massachusetts, who says, "They only gave me painkillers after my mastectomy. They refused for chemo no matter how much pain I was in. After my double mastectomy, they sent me home with a prescription for Dilaudid. I took it on time for 2 straight weeks, exactly how they told me to, and I had withdrawals so bad I went crying to my primary care physician. She gave me a script for Ativan, a muscle relaxer, and offered a low-dose narcotic. Turns out I needed none of that. I took a half a dose of cannabis oil in the morning and a half a dose at night, and all symptoms vanished. I was finally able to eat, the cold sweats stopped, and my body temp finally regulated. If cannabis oil is legal in your state, I highly suggest it to everyone to try at least before grabbing that prescription bottle. I eliminated 2 benzos and an opioid with just a little extra oil. Just sharing my story in case anyone can find it helpful. It's my story too. Thank you."
You. Ms. Whaler, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Doris Whaler, and I live at 10668 Southwest Edgewood Court. First of all, I'd like to say there are a lot of people that move to Wilsonville because of our schools. I'm quite a supporter of our schools and our bonds. And so if you like the education your kids have been getting here, I urge you to vote for the bond and the levy. So I've personally known, or at least been acquainted with, every city councilor and every mayor that has ever served in Wilsonville. There has not been a single one, and this includes my husband, who was on the first city council, who has been a higher quality person than John Badillo. His recommendations are impeccable. His community service was acknowledged by Wilsonville's First Citizen Award. He would have served on a board or commission had the mayor seen fit to appoint him. I ask you to examine your hearts and your brains and put aside any personal biases that may exist and appoint John Badillo, the only candidate backed by 4,025 voters in the last election. That's 4,025 people who believe John would make an excellent city councilor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lau.
Mayor Knapp, councilors, Debbie Lau, 6820 Southwest Westchester Court, Wilsonville. I echo the vote for the levy and the bond for the school district. My kids are long gone, but I'm still voting for it. And I want to thank you for your diligent effort in taking the time through this appointee process. I've been impressed by the questions you asked at the interviews a couple weeks ago. And it's been a very thoughtful and mind-expanding process. I learned a lot just listening to it. I kind of echo what Doris just said about John Badillo, and I think that the council has a unique opportunity, I think this is a unique opportunity, to appoint somebody who has the support of your constituents. I don't know if this has ever happened before where you have an appointment open and the most qualified person has just run for office and had so much support. So I just hope that you make that choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaJoy.
Hello, Mayor Knapp and city councilors. I'm Dr. Laura LaJoy. I live at 11274 Southwest Mackenzie Court West in Wilsonville. And I too am here in support of John Badillo. I know him in multiple capacities over the last 15 years, not the least of which is having been the recent past president of the Rotary Club, who did select him as our first citizen. I had the opportunity to read 6 different submissions for his candidacy as a first citizen that had to do directly with his volunteerism, community service, and active participation in our community. Not only that, I used to live across the street from him. He moved a few years ago. And with that, I found that when he ever had a job that needed to be done, he did it. If he said he was going to do something, he followed through, and he has the utmost integrity of anyone I've ever known. A loyal person he is. And he's the kind of person that when you're in a group working together, if he sees a need, he will fill it. Not only will he fill it, but he will also look at what can I do to better do this project? And if I don't have the skills and resources, who can I find that can work arm in arm with me in that task? John is of what we'd call Wilsonville-centric. Wilsonville-centric meaning that he lives, eats, and breathes the community of Wilsonville through his operations with the Wilsonville Boy Scouts, operations with school, workday, and the list is long, and you've seen it in his interviews. I don't need to go into that for you. The other things that he brings to the table that I think are incredibly important is conscious and conscientious leadership. He's served in multiple areas of the military, as you know, and with all of the FEMA training that he's done, when we look at what needs to happen as far as securing our schools, making sure that the safety and preparation of our city in terms of a disaster, he's the optimal candidate to be able to support us in some of those efforts as well. Again, I think that John Badeo is one of those people that if you were to look over your shoulder and see him behind you, you would always know that he has your back, no matter what the project. John and I have not always agreed on every single task. What we do agree is that we can come together and negotiate an idea, use our resources together equally and respectfully, and get the job done so it's to the best benefit of anyone involved. So with that, I submit that John Badeo is your best selection for candidate for city councilor, and thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Johnson.
Good evening, Council. With respect to time, I have a letter I'm reading in absence of former Councilor Starr, and then my own brief. My name is Kate Johnson. I live at 7744 Southwest Vallejos Drive. A letter to City Council from former City Council Scott Starr. I'd like to share my concerns with the counselor selection process and urge you to publicly interview Eric Postma before you make your decision to appoint the next counselor. I think it is great that so many candidates expressed interest and were willing to donate their time, energy, and experience to the city of Wilsonville. This speaks so well about the citizens of our city. While we were publicly introduced to the 5 finalists, I found it shocking that the most qualified candidate on paper was not in part of that mix. It was even more disturbing to me that in the interviews, to find out more about the candidates and thank them for the willingness to serve the city of Wilsonville. The mayor chose to take most that time to verbally attack Mr. Postma and share his displeasure of him due to Mr. Postma's leadership with the Wilsonville Chamber and Chamber's positions, which at times were in conflict with the mayor's personal opinions. This is not how a volunteer should be treated. Mr. Postma's leadership with the Chamber and his unique experience on 2 city boards, planning and DRB, gave him more experience in understanding issues that the city faces than all of the other candidates put together. Somehow, the arguably strongest candidate never got the opportunity to let the citizens of Wilsonville see for themselves. It would appear that the question, quote, how well would the prospective candidate work with the sitting council, was given more weight to allow the council president and mayor to avoid allowing Mr. Postma to get to the next round. Mr. Postma was president of the Wilsonville Chamber and served on both city boards during each of my 2 terms on council. I have never heard from either city board or any chamber member except for the mayor about Mr. Postma's ability to work with the committee as a member. I also believe this question is an arrogant overstepping of the process, and the real question should have been, Who is the strongest candidate to represent and accomplish the will of the citizens of Wilsonville? I also have to share my concern that the council saw fit to ask as one of the top 5 or 6 questions to each potential counselor that they thought about managing issues south of the city limits where the new counselor will have no authority over. The personal agenda item of the mayor's was completely outside of the many more relevant questions that the new counselor would have authority over and vote on. In conclusion, if the city's desire is to have this appointment serve in the best interests of the city in a transparent fashion, the decision should be delayed until after a public interview with Mr. Postma. One last sentence. If the process is not changed, it stands as a monument to certain counselors' cowardice to letting the public see how the best candidates could showcase their experience, intellect, and desire to serve the people of Wilsonville. Okay, that was a mouthful. That was a letter. I lended my 3 minutes, but I haven't even spoken mine, so. Would you allow me to speak?
Okay, do you want to speak for yourself now?
Thank you. So, Kate Johnson again, I want to echo what I heard earlier from the other folks moving forward with Mr. John Badillo. You've heard me speak about him before. And knowing what I know about the process has been, I think you've done an excellent job of coming through and asking the valid questions. When it comes for runnings for city council, typically the process for the candidate to show their engagement through serving on a committee, parks, DRB, budget committee, academies, the Citizens Academy. Unlike some of the other candidates, John has not, but where John has not officially served, he's really, as Dr. Laura LaJoy says, Wilsonville-centric. He has served tenfold in his community. So in the 97070 zip code, I know of no one else in this community who is unbiased and can bring people together, who listens, who's hardworking, and in my mind, have their citizens, the Wilsonville citizens, in their best interest. So he will also offer a fresh perspective, and he will listen and work for you on behalf of the citizens. So my vote, I just submit to you, would be John Badillo. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak during public input portion? I am not seeing any, so I guess we will move on to the next item, which is under mayor's business, the council appointment from the process that we have been engaged in for a period of time. Prior to the process, we publicly identified a set of different kinds of considerations that council would use in making a decision of who was appropriate, and experience on a existing city board was but one factor, not all factors. I think there are copies of this on the counter if anyone would like to have it, but I would like to read through, and I think council, you all have a copy to refresh in front of you. Certainly the city charter requirements are paramount. Person must be a U.S. citizen, must be a qualified citizen to vote, who has been a Wilsonville resident for at least 12 months immediately preceding the appointment. We are asking that the person would have demonstrated commitment to the community through prior service, such as participation on boards or commissions, government task force, or boards of directors of nonprofit organizations. We ask that the person understands and is committed to fulfilling the workload of being a counselor, and that will commit to fulfilling the term and hopefully intend to run for the council position after that. We're looking for a person that understands and is committed to principles of good government and all the things that that means. A person that has willingness to listen and learn before forming policy, opinions, and positions. A person that values diversity in geographic experiences, gender, ethnicity, and age in planning and providing for the present and the future of our community, including in our schools. A person that contributes to the geographic distribution of council member representation of our community. A person that understands and is knowledgeable with council policies, goals, and legislative agenda. A person who shows commitment to uphold the Oregon government ethics laws as well as the Wilsonville Charter, laws, and council decisions, and understands Oregon's statutory financial disclosure requirements as contained in the Statement of Economic Interest. Person that understands all presented materials and representations will be subject to independent review and verification, and that this appointment is to be an open and transparent public process. And a person that understands that if selected, any false statements, omissions, or misrepresentations may result in disqualification or dismissal. So there are a variety of different considerations that are at play here that are alluded to in that list of considerations. We have had a chance to interview a variety of people, and I want to thank profusely all 10 applicants that we had that expressed interest. They certainly had evidence of various different personal stories and strengths that they drew from their experiences and their careers. And the diversity in experiences was quite profound, and I was very impressed by that. We have one appointment position available. We don't have 10, we don't have 5. We do have and will continue to have other volunteer opportunities in our community and in our local government, and people that have a sustained and ongoing interest in that local government enterprise will find opportunities to participate in many other ways. So I urge the council to think about all the different considerations that we have talked about in making a choice of who is to work with us. The 5 finalists that we had in front of us last meeting include Olive Gallagher, Katie Ham, William Amadon, Joanne Linville, and John Badile. And there again, the 5 finalists also present quite a wide range of different personal experiences and different particular strengths, and each would bring something significant to the council, but we have to make a choice amongst all those different people and approaches and perspectives that we heard presented during our interviews. So we need to undergo a process that would enable us to move forward on this and to see if we have a consensus. Councilor Ackervall, do you have something?
I wonder if we, as council members, could all write down our top 2 selections for the position and pass that information to the city recorder for her to review and kind of make a tally, just to see where we all are and see if we have, in the review of the material and the careful consideration in the interviews, can coalesce around a candidate.
Okay, is that a motion?
That's a motion.
That's a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second, to move forward with a process to do a formal kind of a tally as to who our preferences are individually, and we can proceed with that if that is the council's will. Is there other discussion on this motion?
I would just add that I think it's not really, or perhaps we can discuss if it is or isn't, a formal, so much of a formal vote as it is an idea of seeing if there is agreement, because we will still have a formal.
Right, it's not a selection
It's not
per
a
se,
selection.
no, right.
It's just a step in the direction.
Councilor West?
Yeah, I just think for transparency, it's, I think it's important that we read what counselor specifically chose who, and that the entire process is 100% like out there. And I think I appreciate that that's on every one of our pieces of paper. And I'm okay with doing the whole writing, but with the clarity that this is not a vote, but this is kind of trying to hash out kind of where we all sitting initially, and then to move on from discussion from there about where we're at with the process, how we feel about it.
Yeah.
Okay, is that in alignment with the maker of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, then we need to vote on this protocol motion, or this step, I guess. All in favor of the process that we've just outlined, please say aye.
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 Aye, passes 4-0. All right. In that case, then, I will ask the council to proceed to fill out your straw poll, and we will ask the city recorder to collect those, and then to...
Just to clarify, is our first choice and our second choice?
Yes, there's a, number one choice would be your top preference. Number two choice might be your secondary preference that we're talking about listing. And
for me personally, there's a heavy split on me still on this decision, and I would like it just to potentially maybe be our just top two choices.
well, that's not the way the motion was made and passed.
Since we're in discussion, I wonder, so I think this process will see if there's one candidate or a small group of candidates now, as we kind of whittle things down, that we can coalesce around. So I think, as they're reading them out, it would still give us that sense, right? To have two names read for each council member.
Oh yeah, two names, but yeah. I'm fine with the two names. That's not what I'm saying. I don't.
We just had a motion and passed a motion to do it this way. Now you're saying you don't want to do it this way, or you want to alter it?
Well, we just had a discussion on if one would be our preference, and then two would be our secondary, or if it would just be our top two in general. That's
Like
is the discussion
number
point.
ones?
Yeah, it could literally be like, these are just my top two.
Well, you may write down whatever you would wish, but we...
If you guys are feeling more like you have your one and your top and then your second, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. If you want to scratch it out and put number one.
Okay.
Get two number ones.
1.5.
Why don't we complete this? Again, we have Olive Gallagher, Katie Ham, William Amadon, Joanne Linville, and John Badile.
Yes. Well, I'll fold mine so it'll be secret till she gets it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Counselor West, number 1, John Badile, number 2, Joanne Linville. Mayor Knapp, number 1, Joanne Linville, number 2, William Amadon. Council President Ackerval, number 1, Joanne Linville, number 2, William Amadon. Councilor Lehan, number 1, Joanne Linville, number 2, Katie Ham. So then we have one number 1 for John Badile. We have 3 number 1s for Joanne Linville. And then for number 2, we have 1 number 2 for Joanne Linville. We have 2 number 2s for William Amadon. And we have 1 number 2 for Katie Ham.
Okay, it would seem like there is some particular evidence there for a consensus.
Your Honor, I would move, based on this straw poll and further discussion, I would move to appoint Joanne Linville to the city council term beginning 9/16/19 to 12/31/20.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Well, I will just say as maker of the motion, I could repeat a lot of the things that the mayor said. I think all of these people were really excellent, and there were several that we didn't hear from that I thought were excellent also. I mean, all 10, we really are fortunate to have this many qualified individuals in the community who are willing to step up and put their name forward. And I certainly hope that all of them continue to be involved in the city in one way and another, either with the city or the many other ways that you can be involved in the community that are not directly the city. As far as how I arrive at this kind of decision, I think besides those considerations that the mayor read, a big consideration for me is who are we replacing? And in this case, we are replacing Susie Stevens, who has been a counselor here for nearly 2 terms. Yeah, no, anyway, a bunch of years. And so I tried my best to put myself in the mindset of Susie Stevens' constituents, not who Susie Stevens would like to see, but as well as I can ascertain, because you have to consider that every single elected official at this dais and every other elected official everywhere else, we each have a unique constituency of voters who voted for us, and they are different than who voted for Kristen or Councilor Ackerval or Councilor West. And if I was replacing one of them, it would be a different consideration. I would be thinking, who would their constituents be most likely to support? So that's kind of the lens that I am looking at. And I've been through this process many times, both as a city councilor and as a county commissioner, appointing new people to the dais. And the other thing I want to bring out here, because I'm the one to say it because I'm the one with the personal experience, and that is, I think when you have run for election and lost. And I say this because I have run for election and lost, and I've run for election and won. And after I lost an election to the county commission, I was approached by the commissioners then, not then, but some years later, when they were doing a replacement process. Did I want to be considered for appointment to the vacant space? And I said that I didn't want to put them in that position, that I didn't want to put myself in that position, because the voters had already said no to me. And that there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's your responsibility. If you really think you're the person for the job, you need to run again. And you can run as many times as you want, but there's something that doesn't feel right, either as an appointer, in my mind, as an appointer, or as an appointee. if the voters have turned me down for whatever reason, maybe they were having a bad day and they've made a mistake. If I ran again, they would definitely choose me this time. But anyway, that's kind of my position with that. And with regards to Mr. Postma, it is even more the case because he directly ran against Susie Stevens and lost. And so that doesn't, so it, as opposed to Mr. Badillo, who did not run against her. So there was, anyway, these are all considerations I think that, at least that play in my mind. I think people should definitely run again if they lose and want to run again. But I think it's sticky for us to appoint someone the voters have said no to, no matter how many votes they got. And I would take myself out of the running on that too. But as for Joanne Linville, I think that she is an excellent selection because she's very experienced. She was brilliant in her interview, I thought, and very much like what I think Susie Stevens' constituents would support if we just picked them as a bunch and said, who would you choose? That's the best selection I could make on behalf of those constituents, which would be different if I was thinking of any of the rest of us or me. And that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Councilor Ackerville.
I don't know, I just want, this is by far, I think, been the most difficult question that's come across during my time serving on council. And the reason I say that is because in the group of people that expressed interest in this, there is excellent people. And there's many in that group that I think we could see in this position and serving in an excellent way. So, it's been a hard couple days, you know. It's something that I've considered a lot and spent a lot of time reviewing application materials. And, you know, I want to express that I'm considering this very seriously and not lightly, and really trying to listen through the process. One of the things that struck me in the interview responses was the candidates that stressed listening themselves. And not every candidate did that. Some candidates spoke more about using their own voice. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do is listen to each other on this council, listen to our community, listen to our staff and their expertise and what they prepare for us. And only through that listening will we be able to do our best work. So I was impressed with the information and the knowledge that Ms. Linville, that Joanne had in the projects that we're working on currently, but I was also very impressed with the times that she talked about listening and continuing to learn and taking what she knows and continuing to grow that. So that is what brought me to, you know, where I'm at currently. I will also say that Mr. Amidon, having worked on the budget committee and his service in that capacity, has shown that has a huge appetite for digesting the information that we have, asking good questions along the way, and approaching the time always with a positive attitude and a smile, and wanting to work in a collaborative way. This is a hard decision because there's many people on our list that talked about collaboration, and I know would bring that too. So I echo what Councilor Lehan spoke about, and hoping that we see the continuum of involvement and new involvement in different roles of some of these candidates, because we are so fortunate to have a wealth of both experience, but also really a good heart in the people that expressed interest in wanting to serve our community. We are a very lucky community for that. Those are my comments.
Thank you much. Councilor West.
I want to start off by making sure we recognize publicly the 5 candidates that were not even chosen to be finalists. And they're great citizens. I'm proud they're my neighbors. Laura Hansen applied. I have every application in front of me. Laura Hansen, thank you. Scott Nichols, amazing man in the community, amazing father, amazing volunteer. Scott Nichols, thank you for applying. Robert Candrian, I don't know you, but I really appreciated your application. Thank you for applying. Jerry Wolf, thank you. Eric Postma. His name's been brought up today. 8 years, Planning Commission. The one board beneath us, the most significant committee, 8 years distinguished service. The review board, Development Review Board, distinguished service. Has presented cases before the Oregon Supreme Court 4 times. Land use expert. A dad in the community, heavily involved in our school districts, sports systems. A man that will help you move a couch, that will help you mow your lawn if you're shut in, that has the same volunteer spirit that makes Wilsonville great. This man was not a finalist. When I made my when I went through all these applications, and I took time to call every single one or as many of the references that I could and speak to these people, it was part of my process, and I worked hard to come to the decision I came to. And the big deciding factor for me on the decisions that I would come to in this decision was, I'm not a voter in this right now. And the voters don't get to choose for a year and a half, or just around that time frame. And when someone comes before you qualified in this situation, I said to myself, if they are qualified, if they check the boxes, and if they are the 5 most qualified in the process, then I almost think of it as how we would look at a judicial nomination. That person is nominated by how they're nominated, and then it's my job to confirm them, regardless if ideologically they always measure up to what I think or don't think. Joanne Linville, by all occasions, I may not agree with her on some issues. She's a fantastic candidate, and I'll speak to that near the end. But we didn't see all 5 candidates that were the best. That same judicial eye, without petty bias and arrogance, was not given before the citizens of Wilsonville and before this council. And that is a shame and a disservice. Because it's not about, and here's another thing, our city has a history, until maybe Scott Starr, of appointing the next person to run for office as an incumbent. And people wouldn't even run for office, and the voters got very little say in it. It's like, we're gonna appoint this person to fill this seat, and then we're just gonna run an incumbent. Because I'll tell you this much, I really, really care about the democratic process. And I really care about the voters who made this vote less than 1 year ago. And John Badillo, by a very narrow margin, would be sitting on this diocese. And ran against Susie Stevens, Eric Postma, lost by 81 votes. The voters have spoke. Our neighbors had a voice. Our neighbors cast a ballot. We're not casting ballots, and we're not the voters. And I really am appalled that not only will we take a large majority of the citizens of this city and shut them out, we won't even bring the top 5 candidates before us to make a decision. Yeah, we like them all. They're all great. That's absolutely true. For a council that always harps on process and has harped it on many other issues, process, well, this process from the beginning was flawed when we did not bring the top 5 candidates. And even if the top 5 candidates were brought before us and my guy's not picked and we got a good qualified person, then we got a good qualified person, and I judged on the actual merits. Those candidates before us were not the top 5. The interviews alone were obvious of that. Go back and watch them if you haven't. Most candidates could not even fill a third of the time given to them. Great people, great citizens, and do all kinds of great things for the community. But 2 candidates, if you go door to door, stand out. Joanne Lundville is absolutely one of them. So is John Badillo. But there's a bias. And I think that sometimes we pretend to say that we like to have all different voices at the table on this diocese, but the truth is you don't want it unless it's a super minority, and then it can have a small voice at the table. John Badillo might have a different voice than you, so he's shut out from a bipartisan large swath of the citizens. So that's my problem with the beginning of the process. And I think Scott Starr's testimony hits on that. And on Joanne Lundville, we don't agree on everything. I had long off-the-record conversations with her. I called every single one of her references, and this is what I really appreciate, some of the things they said about her. And I think that this is true. They told me that Joanne Lundville is an evidence-based person, that she looks at things judiciously with an evidence-based eye. And I think that that's amazing. That she has a history of being able to collaborate while also not agreeing in a way that's really impactful. That she has the utmost integrity and she won't sacrifice her integrity because of pressure. She also, they told me she's not a title seeker, which we specifically talked about at length. And I thought that that was really impactful. We talked about issues like the airport. We talked about issues like PERS reform and that faces the city with looming costs. We talked about a lot of real issues, and I think she has a great compassion heart. I think she'll be a good person to fill the seat for Susie Stevens. I feel like, though, as a council, we have failed Wilsonville in the process.
Well, you've heard the perspectives of several different people. I won't add significantly, except to say I thought Councilor Lehan and Councilor Ackerval rounded out some very appropriate points. Obviously, I'm not in agreement with Mr. Starr's accusations or letter, and I think that that is an inappropriate way to present a point of view in this process. We have done the entire process by agreement going forward and have published the process in advance and the considerations that would be used in advance, and we have had the largest pool of capable, qualified people to ever come forward, in my knowledge, for a Wilsonville City Council seat at one time. So I think that from that standpoint, the process has been successful and been appropriate, and I am pleased that we have done so. The process has been more robust and more intensive, if you wish, more complete than any prior council process for appointment in Wilsonville that I'm aware of. And I think that we are likely to be beneficiaries of the outcome of the process as the council moves forward. anyone in the city that meets the elector qualifications is welcome to run for this office and can do so relatively soon. This appointment goes through the end of 2020. The November 2020 election will have openings that people are welcome to run for. What the citizens decided 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or 8 years ago is not necessarily indicative of what the citizens would decide in the upcoming election. So if people are so inclined, I encourage them to run for office. I think that that's probably all I need to say at this point in time, and
I was just going to ask you if you wanted to remind people about when you were an applicant for city council, because
I was not selected the first time I applied.
I was on the council doing the selecting, and we did not select you the first time, and we did the second time.
That's right, that's right. For people that want to really dig back, you can read about Abraham Lincoln, who lost his, first 4 or 5 or some elections, something like that, but persevered and became someone notable.
And you were were you the chair at the time of the chamber?
No, I was the president-elect of the chamber.
President-elect of the chamber, yeah. And we didn't take you then, so it wasn't. I can't say who, I can't remember who we took. No, Steve Benson.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that Eric Postma has also been president of the chamber twice, and it's interesting how you both got to run as incumbents because you were just appointed. So, to my point.
Huh?
Okay. At this point, I think I'll call the question and ask for the vote on the motion to appoint Joanne Linville to the existing vacancy for a term that would run through 12/31/20. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I said aye.
Yes, yeah. So that's a 4-0 result on that motion, and we will ask Ms. Linville to join us and be sworn in as a counselor for the city of Wilsonville. Okay. Thank you, one and all. That brings us to the second item that I have under mayor's business, which is meetings. We did have several August meetings canceled due to the summer and lack of attendance, probably, including the 2020 Transportation Task Force that's working with Metro did not meet. Upcoming, we have the Clackamas County Business Alliance will be hearing a detailed report on ODOT's study of I-205 widening and projected seismic improvements for 205. And Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting is upcoming, where there will be discussion on transportation and land use issues also. That's all I need to report on. For other reports, I'll go to Council President Ackervall. Is there anything you would like to report on at this point?
This isn't so much of a report as it is maybe just a little reminder. I noticed in the Boonesbury Messenger for this last month, there was a nice big information spread about September and Emergency Preparedness Month. And I wanted to call that out because I do think it's something very important to everyone in the community. And so one idea that my family is doing this month is every week we are trying to get one step closer. So, you know, sometimes people are at different levels of their own preparedness, and if it feels daunting, if you could just do one step every week, you will be at least 4 steps closer by the end of the month, and it's something that you can build on. So if it's just replacing out whatever bottled water, or if you don't have bottled water, bring in some jugs of water or something, or reviewing to see if some of the food that you've set aside in your kit is expired, or do you have flashlights in a place that's handy? Have you reviewed a plan with all family members? Something, there's several ideas in the Boonesbury Messenger too that you can be considering. So if we all just took one one step every week during the course of the month. We've got 2 more days for this week. That would be something that would serve our whole community in resiliency in the case that we would need to respond to an emergency. So a challenge, perhaps, to us all.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Lehan.
Yes, I was approached by a constituent this a week or so ago from Villebois, who was wanted to report graffiti in Villebois, and I knew we had a number, but I wasn't sure what it was. Now I do have a card, and it says here, graffiti is vandalism. It is not a 911 call, but Public Works wants to respond very quickly to remove graffiti. And the number, I will say very slowly, so everybody has time to get their pencil out. But you should really put it on your refrigerator. If you see graffiti anywhere in town, report it to this number, 503-682-4092. 682-4092 is the number to report graffiti, and Public Works will get out and take care of it right away. And then the second thing I want to mention again is at the end of September 24th at McMinimans, I will be doing a presentation in conjunction with Mr. Leo waving back there called Myths and Milestones in Wilsonville History. And we will raise some interesting questions about both about what happened or didn't happen, and also what is the most important, what are some of the most important things. So it should be an interesting evening, and we'll have plenty of dialogue. September 24th. As always, the History Pub at McMinimans is the last Tuesday of the month, and doors open at 5. Program starts at 6:30.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor West.
Friday is the opening night for Wilsonville High School football. If you're not there, it's an amazing event. Hundreds of Wilsonville neighbors of yours are all there. And it's not only just the opening night where Wilsonville plays Crater in 22 hours and 26 minutes to be exact. At Friday night at 6. So Friday, September 6th at 7. It's a home game. John and I are going to be flipping burgers together for the families. It's also Youth Appreciation Football Night. So the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, maybe the 4th and 5th too. So all the youth football guys are going to be there in their uniforms. They're going to be recognized. It's a big deal for the youth football kids because they really look up to the high school guys and Coach Gunther. So if you can make it, this is a massive event. Well, every home football game for Wilsonville is a massive event. Go out and support the Wildcats, support the youth of the city, show up, and come let John and I feed you a burger or a hot dog. So it's a great event. Also, the 8th grade boys, I don't know if it matters, but I don't think people are going to make it to this one because it's pretty far out. They play St. Helens and St. Helens. So that's going to be a big deal the next day. So hopefully they'll get fired up by the high school guys. And then also I know we're not a school board, but welcome all the kids back to school. So we didn't really get a chance to do that yet, but they got backpacks in tow. They are ready to learn and eager, hopefully. And I want to thank all of our educational staff, every single teacher, every single person that is working in our school districts to improve the lives of our kids. Thank you very much. And I also will be supporting the bond and the levy 110%. Let's continue to keep Wilsonville and West Lynn's education system the pride of the community. I am so proud of our school district. It's immensely benefited our family. So I will echo the mayor in that consensus and Doris Whaler in that consensus that we need to support our kids. So support the bond when it gets on your ballot.
Thank you. That brings us to consent agenda. If we could have that read, please.
Resolution number 2763, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville approving amendment number 1 to the charging stations license agreement with Portland General Electric for installation of electric vehicle charging stations on city property. Resolution number 2764, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing a utility easement agreement between the City of Wilsonville and Portland General Electric.
Thank you. Is there a motion on consent?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Go ahead, you got it.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent agenda, 2 items as read. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 4-0. Brings us to city manager's business.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick items. It's that time of year. We're recruiting for a fresh batch of citizens to go through our Citizens Academy. I have a flyer for each one of you that I'll pass out at the end of the meeting if you want to do some direct recruitment. We went live, I think last Friday. We already have 5 applications in, so we always have more applications than we have seats. It's limited to 25 folks. We're trying to also save 2 of those spots for high school students, so we're doing some direct recruitment. We're working with Wilsonville High School to get a couple of youth involved. The deadline is October 31st. It's on the city's website. That's ci.wilsonville.or.us/academy. So you can go there and apply. We encourage you to. It's a deep dive on all the programs and services we provide. It's very successful. And if you complete the actual coursework, you too will get a street name sign with the city's logo on it at the end of that.
Yeah, but don't wait till October 31st. It'll be full by then.
Well, we take applications up till the 31st and then we screen them. We have a screening process. So we're looking for diversity and, you know, try to balance it out. So yes, you do have until the 31st. And lastly, you have at your dais, you have a packet on the League of Oregon Cities conference put together for you by Zoe Monahan. It's got all your information in it. There's nothing you need to do. You're all signed up. It's got your room reservation stuff in there. If you have any questions, just let me or Zoe know. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal business.
So for legal business, I'm just going to briefly touch on this topic tonight, and I believe Mr. Cosgrove is going to put this on the agenda at the next meeting and work session. The Aurora Airport issue is coming back to the forefront in terms of the status of the master plan. I have a couple of letters from the that have come out in the few recent weeks from the new director, Betty Stansberry, and also information from an attorney working with the Friends of French Prairie on the master plan program. The question is going to be, what, if any, role is the city going to want to take as this topic comes back into the forefront? So I'm going to pass out to you tonight these letters just so you have the information and can read it. We aren't going to talk about it tonight. You should have time to think about it and do your own research as you see fit. But Mr. Cosgrove will be sure to put it on a work session for the next meeting.
It'll be on work session and on a regular agenda as well for you to provide direction on whichever way you want staff to participate.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else?
That'll do it.
That will do. Okay. I guess, is there anything else the council would like to talk about tonight? If not, I will call us adjourned at 8:39. Thank you very much.